flew in from Seattle. Along with Phyllis came what's known as the Anderson Mantra. And guess what it is? A, B, C. Right? We've already heard from Jonathan about the A part. We've already heard about the B part. But I'd like to talk a little bit tonight about the connectedness that Phyllis brought to PLTS. Now, we know that when it comes to making a connection with ELCA headquarters, Phyllis is obviously the one because she wrote the book. We saw the book held up by Jonathan, but Phyllis wrote it. Now I'd like to tell you a little story about what happened. So recently, the seminary presidents of ELCA met together to discuss some business, but they also had a party for Phyllis because this was her retirement. And of course they had to mention the study of theological education, and someone brought out a copy of the study and had it for Phyllis and presented it to her on pink paper. So Phyllis has brought connections to the seminary through that, also through the synods and regions 1 and 2, which are the regions that we deal with. Not only the bishops, but the synodical conventions and the congregations in those regions. Then, in addition to that, of course, there were the connections with the GTU. And I'm so happy that some of our GTU presidents are here tonight because the GTU has been critical and key to the future of PLTS. And there was always commitment, there's always been commitment from Phyllis Anderson to the program of the GTU. Now, there's also connections between Phyllis and our other ELCA schools, specifically the Western Mission Cluster. So here's a story about that. One year, we were at the meeting she and I were at the meeting of the cluster, which was held at Spirit of the Desert in Arizona. And we were going to share, we had rented a car, we were going to share the car to get the car returned to the airport. Now, of course, I'm nervous. We've got to leave. We've got to get going. We're going to miss the flight. We have to go. We have to go right now. Well, Phyllis is saying goodbye to a few people, and it's taking a little while. Finally, we get in the car, we get in there, and I'm thinking, thank heaven we made that. But we're driving along, and here's a church off to the side. And Phyllis says, we have to stop in that church. That congregation has been so helpful to one of our students. I have to leave a note. And so off we go, much to my dismay, because I'm sure we're going to lose. But it's somehow characteristic of Phyllis that even as we're going along, she was thinking about the students in that congregation that had been helped. And we had to stop and leave a note, which we did. In addition, there have been connections that Phyllis has made for our seminary with foundations. We've heard an example tonight with Greg Jenke and Thrive-It, who's been helpful not just in tonight, but also with support for the TEAM program, which is one of our premier programs. And furthermore, with donors. There's been no one like Phyllis who comes to tell what's going on at the seminary, why we should be interested, the work that Tom Kling has done with the Remember the Future Society, which is burgeoning under Phyllis's leadership. So this abundant, bold, and connected, by gum, Phyllis, you pulled it off.
It's great to be with you. My name is Joel, and I worked with Phyllis for about 5 years. And you've been very gracious to her throughout the evening, and I've heard many lovely sentiments. But I worked with her. And while it's nice to boast and glean over her many successes, I thought it would only be fair to point out a couple of the glaring failures. And the first obvious glaring failure in her administration was her complete inability to make it about her. She was the first woman president of any of our seminaries, and yet it wasn't about that. For Phyllis, it was about PLTS. And when she had opportunities to rub my face in the fact that she was a woman and I wasn't, she simply failed. And when my most direct counterpart at the seminary, Debbie Howe, by the way, are you here, Debbie? Where are you, Debbie?
To the left.
Another utter failure right there. Completely incapable of making it about her, only caring about the seminary. I find this a puzzlement. And the second obvious failure is Phyllis Anderson's total inability to be arrogant. How can someone so gifted, so capable, so strong, so competent, be so humble? This is a mystery that will simply prevail until the end of time. And then it came time for me to resign because I got a better deal. Kari, the Reverend Kari Sanskar, please stand, Kari. That's my wife. I don't know if any of you remember the commercial on TV way back when Earl Campbell was the running back for the Houston Oilers. I'm sorry if this is, something you don't recall, but Earl Campbell goes and he's doing a commercial for Skoal chewing tobacco. And he's sitting on a beach, and he says, I got the surf, I got the sand, ain't nothing gonna make me move. And then a football comes flying in, and then some beautiful girl comes and picks it up, and he looks into the camera and says, think I'll play some touch. That's a little bit like my life. I love it. I was perfectly happy. Kari came along. I think I'll play some touch. Phyllis. So I resigned, and Phyllis failed to make me feel like a chump. Failure. Her biggest failure, however, is her complete failure in leaving the seminary without a bright future and without a throng of faithful friends who are here tonight to say, thank you, Phyllis, for being such a failure.
Thank you, Judy and Joel. Joel, I think you need to stay with your singing career. There were some significant, what you might call silent partners in this business of arranging a merger between two institutions, PLTS and CLU. And they are the attorneys of the firm Wilson, Socini, Goodrich, and Rosati.